Medals go in an order. Everybody knows this. At the Olympics, there's an order of medals. How's it go? Gold, silver, bronze, iron, Bible. In this episode, we're going to show you that the Bible belongs to the medal category and how this thing, the order of these medals and the way that they work, keeps the entire human race alive. In recent episodes, I have talked a lot, some people might say too much, about correspondence. This is a way that physical stuff is an outer covering for spiritual stuff. And the physical stuff, the stuff we're all familiar with, couldn't stay alive without a connection to the spiritual life force that comes into it from heaven. So in the physical world, we have conductors. This is Conductor. Look at me. I'm reading at a 4th grade level. So, just gotta hook this up. This battery, some wires. And I can understand that. I want one of these. I don't really need this. I want one of these. I don't really need here. This just goes back in here. These are wires. This got battery, and these are the wires. So conductor is a situation where there's something conducting energy from one place to another. In this case, there's energy in this battery, and we don't like it to just stay there. We want it to go to this light bulb, because a light bulb is going to be bright and shiny. So what we have to do is have something that connects the two. And when you get that, look at what I have created. So, do you know why these wires conduct that electricity? There's metal in them. Metal is a crucial element in conducting electricity. The small always reflects the large. So you can learn about this woo-woo spiritual stuff by looking at how physical engineering-based things even work. In the divine design, there has to be a conductor that keeps heaven and earth connected in order for the life which exists in heaven to come into the lowest level, the physical, which by itself doesn't have any life. Just like this light bulb can never light up unless this battery starts getting in there. The conductor, the spiritual conductor between heaven and earth is correspondences. We human beings were created to be the keepers of correspondences, and we do that through the particular kind of mindset that we develop. But throughout the course of history, the human race got less spiritual, got more materialistic, and we broke the conduction loop. We no longer could be that conductor. So God had to work with that and like duct tape and jerry rig things so that that connection could keep going. Whether we realized that it was going or not, new tools were being put into us all the time. We're going to follow the progression of how those mindsets changed, how God maintained this connection, and where the Bible plays into the whole thing. Long time ago, in the days of ancient Greece, there was a poet. His name was Hesiod, and he talked about the ages of humanity. You've probably heard of the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. Well, Hesiod made those up. Plato talked about them. Ovid wrote about those ages too. So this was something that came out of antiquity. The human race had these times in its history that were described using these metal names. Okay, so there's one column. The next, in the Bible, there in the book of Daniel, there's a guy named King Nebuchadnezzar. I'm just thinking of in Charlie Brown, Pigpen, or some.
Maybe carrying soil that was trod upon by Solomon, or even Nebuchadnezzar.
What is that? And Charlie Brown Christmas is like Nebuchadnezzar. I hear that name in that voice when I hear it. But King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream of a statue that had a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron, which was again about these different phases of human history. So these two independent sources are categorizing human history based on metals, an order of metals. And then, last but not least, in the 1700s, Emanuel Swedenborg affirmed that, there have been these different ages of humanity, and it's very appropriate to call them by metal names. He adds, the names of these ages, golden, silver, and bronze, also come from correspondence. So it wasn't just a coincidence. When Hesiod was doing his thing and David was seeing that statue, it's because it's not just an arbitrary label that's put on. Something about those ages connected to the nature of the metals that were used to represent them. So physical things like metals are also symbols of spiritual stuff. And the depth of that symbolism and correspondence is that it's not just one is assigned to one, but the properties of the physical thing, what the physical thing is like, can teach you about the spiritual phenomenon that it represents. How is that not interesting? Metals are, so let's look what that means. Metals are used as physical conductors for electricity, but also for heat. So what can these particular metals teach us about the state of the human race and the state of the human mind in each of those ages, and the quality of the heaven and earth connection that happened in those ages? Hesiod said that when it was the golden age, which you can just tell sounds like the best, because gold is the best one, right? And you know that because even when we were, in the beginning we had that layout with those different metals, we were able to borrow something silver, we could borrow something bronze, we borrowed something iron. Nobody had gold lying around. I had to use my own wedding band. Do not show this to my wife. And because gold is precious, it's the specialist one. So the golden age was good. Life was peaceful, according to Hesiod. It was happy. Food was abundant. You didn't have to work for your food. There wasn't any sickness. There wasn't any strife or misery. Death was just peaceful. And after you died, people still knew you were around in spirit. You could still be a guardian spirit for people on earth. So it was like what he describes is like the way you'd think life should be. And this matches what Swedenborg wrote about what he calls the most ancient people. That they were living. The reason life was so heavenly for them is because their state of mind, the way that they were and the way that they thought, was a conductor. It was an excellent conductor between heaven and earth. Swedenborg wrote in Heaven and Hell, I have been taught in heaven that the earliest people on our planet who were heavenly people thought on the basis of actual correspondences, and that the natural phenomena of the world that greeted their eyes served them as a means for thinking this way. So everything that those people saw, they thought about the spiritual reality behind the things they were seeing. So they were always walking around with their head in the clouds, in a way, which, by the way, that is a correspondence to talk about your head being in the clouds. Because they were of this character, they were in the company of angels and talked with them. And in this way, heaven was united to the world through them. Conductor. People living on earth that had a mind that was in heaven. And therefore, that era was called the Golden Age. Classical authors, like our Greek friends we've been talking about, described it as a time when the inhabitants of heaven dwelt with mortals and kept them company as friend with friend. The name Golden Age makes sense because, as Swedenborg says in 115, gold, by reason of correspondence, means the heavenly goodness in which the earliest people lived. Heavenly goodness means a life coming from intuitive, mutual love. Let's look at the characteristics of gold. Why is gold a symbol or a correspondence for goodness? So gold is extremely durable, and at the same time, it's pliable. It's soft enough that you can shape it in incredible ways, but it's not going to break down. It's beautiful. It's shiny. Also, gold is found in nature. Not all metals are like that. This occurs in a natural state. And it doesn't rust. It doesn't tarnish. This is why people want to make everything from the semiconductors and spaceships to your wedding band out of gold. So that gold teaches us about this state of mind that's based on heavenly goodness. In parallel, that state of mind is strong and lasting, but it's not rigid. There's flexibility because of the love in your mind when you're in that state. It is beautiful and enlightening. It's found in God's design. This is something that humans haven't messed with a ton. This is how it was supposed to be. And it's not vulnerable to corruption. Doesn't tarnish. But that era did come to an end. People did eventually say, I'm going to drift away from this and I'm going to abandon this love-centered, golden style life. God said, okay, I'm going to find a way that we can still do that conduction thing, but it's going to have to be done through a different medium. So the golden age ended. Golden age was over, and the silver age began. It's not that ominous sounding, because silver is still pretty great. Silver is a great metal. The silver age was a good age, but it's different. Silver is it's still precious, but it's a very different natured, or at least different looking metal than gold is. When humanity started to turn their minds away from that most pure state, then the silver age began. And the main difference is stated here. Silver, in contrast, means the spiritual goodness in which their successors, the early people, lived. The spiritual goodness is intellect-oriented, much more so than heavenly goodness. This, when you're in the silver state of mind, you are going to learn information about what's good and what's true so that you can educate yourself on how to do it, rather than with golden age, you could just feel it in your heart. You just knew. It was like instinct. It's how to do what's right, the reality of the life after death and God and everything that now we go seek and try to find. You could look inside for that. Silver is you have to look outside. You got to go find it. And sometimes you find the wrong stuff, sometimes you find the right stuff. But still, there's plenty of good that goes on there. Swedenborg continues, after the Golden Age era, though, a people came who did not think from actual correspondences, but from a knowledge about correspondences. There was still a union of heaven with humanity, but not such an intimate one. Their era was called the Silver Age. So people weren't operating straight from heavenly impulses anymore. They lost the intuitive knowledge. They couldn't just, everything they saw was obviously teaching them about the goodness and truth. It was reflecting the goodness and truth that was already there. They had to gather ideas, kind of turn them over in their mind, and from that come to a really brilliant understanding. It was a different route, though less direct. And let's look at the characteristics of silver. Which is an image sitting in front of you, a physical image of that state of mind and that era of humanity. It is durable and pliable. Not quite as much as gold. It's still beautiful and shiny. You still can find it in nature, but it tarnishes. You know, like old ladies will polish their silver back when that was a thing that everybody did, because it tarnishes. It is prone to doing that. So this is a correspondence or a representative of a mindset that is strong and lasting, but it's a little bit more rigid than the gold. It's beautiful and enlightening. It's part of God's design, but the tarnishing is a symbol of how it's vulnerable to falsity. Because you're out there trying to learn teachings and pull together a doctrine, all kinds of false ideas that separate you from the truth and from love, they can work their way in there. It's inevitable when you have to go out and find all that stuff. Silver's got to get cleaned up. It's got to get polished. Gold doesn't have to do that. So a state of mind based on heavenly intuition, like the gold, it just stays clean. You stay in that. But when you're in that state of mind where you're learning from ideas, you have to examine yourself once in a while. Is this really true? What I've found, is that really good? So to review, gold is heavenly goodness. It's intuitive. It is the best conductor. Silver is spiritual goodness. This is goodness that is great, but it's learned. And then we get to bronze. The fact that it's a bronze dog is irrelevant. It's just about the bronze, but the dog is cute. Bronze is the next age, and it's the earthly goodness age. This was an era where people generally lost interest in spiritual knowledge. And we're just trying to figure out what's good based on earthly situations around them. Swedenborg continues, the people who came next were indeed familiar with correspondences, but did not do their thinking on the basis of their knowledge of correspondences. So gold was like, this religious stuff is so true, you can feel it. Of course this is the truth. The silver was more, oh yeah, I've heard of that, I'm gonna go try to figure it out. Bronze is, I don't really care. I've got more important things to do. This was because they were engrossed in what is good on a natural level, and not like their ancestors on the spiritual level. Their era was called the Bronze Age. According to Hesiod and Ovid, the Bronze Age is when we invented this thing called warfare. And bronze was used to make weapons, as well as tools and structures. There's a lot of development in the earthly sense, but not necessarily moral development, which makes sense because if the Bronze era is the era of what's immediately right in front of me and how does that make me feel, conquering people, getting those spoils, plundering could be great. And if there's no silver or gold, no spiritual doctrine to teach you that even though it feels like righteous and right and good to go and do these things, it's not, then of course you're going to get an era in which there's warfare. So bronze, as a correspondence, it's strong and the most rigid. It's shiny, but I mean, it's not that shiny. It's more ruddy. It's human made. You can't go and like, hey, I was just swinging my pickaxe and I found a bunch of bronze in the ground. It is actually, you put copper and tin together as what's not found in nature, which is just like that mindset was something that we cobbled together. This was not in the divine design. It can also tarnish, so it's vulnerable to that falsity. It teaches us about this state of mind based on earthly goodness, which is looking at the situation externally, which makes everyone a little bit more rigid. There's not as much beauty in the human condition. There's not as much enlightenment. And these are human-made principles, as I said. It's not something that God laid out for us. This is something we figured we would do better. And evils and falsities can get in there and wreak havoc. But it gets worse. This is not as good a conductor. It gets even worse. There was the Iron Age after that. And Hesiod said that was the age he was living in, and it was full of misery, toil, and conflict. If you think about iron, how far we have fallen. Oh no, it's great for some things. It's good and it's strong, but it's definitely like we're a long way from gold here. Swedenborg writes that iron, though, which gave its name to the last era, means a harsh truth, devoid of goodness. So iron is extremely rigid. It doesn't have goodness in it. So goodness is that softening element. Without goodness, without love, without the impulse and the satisfaction in knowing that I can do good for a conscious being, any idea, even a spiritual idea, turns harsh and can be used to support and justify any kind of evil. Iron is really strong and it's really rigid. It's a poor conductor. It's not pretty or shiny, and also it can rust and dissolve. So this was the further declining of the state of the human mind. Like, this is what God had to work with. And the human mind, the state of the human mind, is incredibly important because this is how heaven connects to earth. Remember that conductor? This is all we had to conduct, and it wasn't enough to keep the two connected to each other. The human mind wasn't able to fulfill that anymore. But God is resourceful. God has got something up his sleeve all the time. And in this case, he had a method to keep a spiritual conductor in the world that would augment the human mind conductor and make it so that no matter how much this deteriorated, we could still have heaven and earth together. So how's God going to pull this one off? We've got the mindset of the human race is deteriorating. We're jumping down metals like crazy. And the human race's mindset is the way in which heaven and earth are connected and how life gets to the human race, there had to be an augmentation process. So here's a little reminder of the purpose of correspondences. The spiritual world, which is heaven, is united to the natural world by means of correspondences. So it is through correspondences that we are given communication with heaven. Correspondences, because there are things in the physical world that symbolize things in the spiritual world, that makes it so our minds, which are centered on physical things, have something to talk about with angelic minds, even if it's on the different level. Like we're talking about the physical thing, they're talking about the spiritual thing. Those two things are aligned enough that there's a connection there. Swedenborg goes on, heaven's angels do not think in terms of natural phenomena the way we do. So when we are absorbed in the knowledge of correspondences, we can be in the company of angels in respect to the thoughts of our minds. So we can be united to them in regard to our spiritual or inner person. It's like there's a language barrier, and this is at least allowing us to we point and gesture, and we know enough that we can communicate. So remember, in the golden age, correspondences was a second language to people. People understood if you're talking about the sun and there it is in the sky, well, that's obviously a picture and an image of the love and the truth that come out of God. If you're looking at gold, this precious metal, it's obviously a symbol of this heavenly goodness. So they had that connection, no problem. This is because of love, because heavenly love was what drove them. It predisposed their mind to be able to speak that language. But people started to get more self-absorbed, and they started to be more worldly minded, and they couldn't keep correspondences in that way anymore. So actually, it was starting in the Silver Age that God had to augment that system, had to find a way to get correspondences into the minds of people. And you know how he did it? The Bible. In the Silver Age, there was a different version. It wasn't this exact Bible that there is now, although there's some material, Swedenborg says, from that word that made it into this. But this book kept correspondences into the human mind. So God made sure that this entire thing is written in correspondences. So everything in here is packed with symbolism. There's not a single part of a single building that it describes how it's being built, or a single journey from one city to another, or a single exhortation from a prophet that doesn't have that symbolism. So as people engage with the text and they read the text, even if they don't totally understand what the correspondences are, because of the way our minds and angels' minds are linked, the connection between heaven and earth would be sustained. It's like the second rail, where you've got the human mind and it maybe can't carry the whole load of voltage, but the word in its different forms is enough that it can close that circuit. And that this word had to change as people's minds changed to continue to be the companion piece to that. Swedenborg wrote in Heaven and Hell 114, isn't this exciting? In order that there might be a union of heaven with humanity, the word was written in pure correspondences. Absolutely everything in it corresponds. There's no frivolous information in there, even though it seems like it. It seems like, how is this about my spiritual life? Why is this relevant to me of what David's going to go do this thing? It is entirely in correspondences. The literal meaning consists of the kinds of things that are in our world, while the spiritual meaning consists of the kinds of things that are in heaven. And since the union of heaven with our world is maintained by correspondences, we have been given a word in which the details correspond, even down to the last jot. So even though the human mind continues to get less spiritual, or did, I believe, and Swedenborg seems to indicate that it's back on the upswing, that we already bottomed out, and we're going to jump back up a couple metal levels. This book keeps us connected to heaven. Even if your heart's not in it, if you're reading it, understanding it, there's at least something for the angels to work with. And Swedenborg talking about the more that your heart is, the more you're just looking for goodness and you have a longing to do what's right, and you approach the text in that way, that's a stronger and stronger connection. So this thing, which has been disseminated across the whole world and is in so many people's minds, is serving this purpose of making it so our minds conduct electricity better. Spiritual electricity. It's a pretty good trick. So it's like we're on the podium at the Olympics, and we're sitting with the iron medal in our hands and looking up at where we used to be. We used to be on gold. We're making our way back up. The human race, yeah, we got a little selfish. We got a little materialistic. We lost the knowledge of correspondences and the truths of God. But you know what? We're going to get that back. Swedenborg is very optimistic that slowly, as we learn, human race becomes more interested in love and truth. We can reinvigorate the mind. Maybe we go back up to where we're in a more bronze state of mind, get from there to silver, where that's really a focus to learn, and the pursuit of spiritual knowledge and living the good life becomes the focus of society. And finally we get back to the place where, well, no duh you be good, no duh you pursue what's good, and that life continues after death and everything, because it's just in your heart. We get back to that golden age and maybe beyond. There's, the platinum age to come. I think that we can do it, and you just got to use your tools. You got to know the correspondences are all around you. The correspondences are in the Bible, and you got God in heaven waiting there to connect. The more that we connect, the more of that heavenly life comes down into earth, and more we all buzz with the electricity of the divine.